get sold. So, I've known Article for a while. One thing he does really well is sell. Today, I'm here to tell my story of how I got to this position. So, I want to start. Slides? Okay. All right. So my story starts in 2004. I actually have an exact date, August 8th, 2004. Anybody want to guess what that date is all about? So that's the day I left for United States. Last year there was a very interesting incident. I was at a college and I asked the student, why he joined that college. The answer he gave me is, sorry, as a cricket team, college joined. And I was really surprised. And then I reflected back to my experience of that day, August 8, 2004. And I started wondering, why did I go to America? And actually, I was surprised myself. I actually could not come up with the answer. So, एक किसिमले मैले त हुन्छ नि अरु साथीहरु गयो मेरो दिदी 2 वर्ष अगाडि जानु भयो सो मैले त एक किसिमले अन्धाधुन तालले सुई अमेरिका पुगे and there was no thinking behind it. It was almost like a trend, a fashion to go to America. So खासै frankly I have to accept there was no logic behind it. अहिले यसो सोच्दाखेरि was that a good decision or not भन्दाखेरि हुन्छ नि only time can tell. So अहिलेसम्म चाहिँ it was a good decision भन्छु है मैले. Interesting thing that happened once I went to America is obviously the life is different. So this image is from Ocean City, Maryland. Now for those who have been to America or have heard stories from their friends or this is a big part of Nepali students' experience in America. So even though I went to America to get an education, I did get a very good education. I was lucky enough to get to a very good liberal arts school. I was lucky enough to get a good scholarship. But it was actually Ocean City, Maryland that taught me my life lessons. So what happens in America is, during the summer there is a 3 to 4 months break. So you go and work. And a lot of Nepalis go there. Every summer, at least at that point, there were 5,000-6,000 Nepalis working in Ocean City. And this is a city that only jumps into action during the summer and it's like completely vacant in the winter. So when I went there, I was basically, you hear stories about Mexican laborers. So we were the Mexican laborers of Ocean City, Maryland. So I was working 12-hour shifts, doing 2 jobs. I used to get up at 6, 7 a.m. in the morning, go to work. I was working as a front desk receptionist from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Rarely even got to have lunch. Then I had a 30-minute break before I could go to my next job, which was a sales clerk at a bedding store. So that I did from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. And once I got home, there was no rest because, it's summer, everybody wants to party. So that's when the party started and, you can imagine we never really got any sleep. So, that experience actually taught me a lot of things. That's where I learned about customer service because, I have to deal with customers all the time. And Ocean City is kind of like a party town. So there's a lot of young people who are just there to party. And when you're in a hotel working as a receptionist, your job is to, make sure everything is in order. There were a lot of crazy incidences that used to happen, police coming in all the time. And that's, I would have to manage a lot of those situations. And that's where I really learned how to deal with stress, how to deal with, terrible customers. I started learning, how to communicate well, how to sell. And हामी नेपालीहरु झनै एकदम ब्रोकको पनि एकदम ब्रोकेस्ट So के हुँदैन नि मलाई my sister told me Ocean City when she was there in 2003 she told me that she was living in an apartment with two bedrooms, 1 bathroom. I think Amun's sister, older sister, brother and his now wife were also living in the same apartment. Can you imagine 10 people living in the same apartment with just 1 bathroom and 2 bedrooms? The hottest place to sleep was actually the bathtub. Interesting. So I actually did not want to live in that situation. So what I did was, before I went to Ocean City, what I did was I actually found a very nice bayfront house with 7 bedrooms. And I went to Ocean City during my spring break and got a very, very good deal in the house. And what I did was I managed to convince 28 of my friends to come and stay in the house, and we paid $75 each to stay in that house. So that was actually my first experience managing property. So I had to recruit people, I had to make sure everybody paid rent. If they did not pay rent, it would have to come out of my own pocket, so I had to make sure I collected all the money. So that was kind of, one of my first experiences. A lot of you might not know about what Biruwa is, but I'll slowly get to that story. So that was kind of my first experience managing a property. And this is, I had never imagined going to America. I thought, my learning would be in the classroom, but it was happening somewhere else. But in 2006, what changed was, the then King Gyanendra took power, and there was a big protest against his coup. So Jana Andolan. अब मैले चाहिँ फ्र्याङ्कली भन्यो भने अमेरिका जाँदाखेरि मलाई हुन्छ नि अब मान्छेले धेरैले त भन्छ नेपाल फिर्ता आउँछु यताउता भनेर सोचिरहेको थियो होला तर फ्र्याङ्कली आई डोन्ट रियली रिकल थिङ्किङ अबाउट even thinking about coming back. त्यति बेला चाहिँ I wanted to have an American dream, go live there, get a good job, buy a house, buy a fancy car. त्यो किसिमको ड्रिमहरु थियो. But in 2006 I started seeing pictures like these. Young people coming out in the streets, being brave, fighting the police. अनि आफूलाई मलाई क्वेशन गर्न थाले कि म कम्फर्टेबली अमेरिकामा बसिरहेको छु के गरिरहेको छु म देशको लागि गर्छु के पनि गरेको छैन हैन I call myself a Nepali तर के गरेँ मैले के पनि गरेको छैन अनि that started sort of kind of my first inclination about coming back. Then interestingly opportunity came my way. In 2007, a friend of mine from New York told me that there's an American guy raising money to build a school in Sindhupalchok. I got very curious. म नेपाली हैन मैले देशको लागि के गरौँ भनेर भइरहेको बेलामा there's an American guy trying to build a school in Nepal. And plus the interesting thing was he was not a rich guy. He was a very modest person with modest income. Living in a one-bedroom apartment with his wife, with no savings, and really struggling. Apparently what happened was he was in Nepal in 2005, backpacking, trekking through the hills. He kind of found this village called Lanche in Sindhupalchok. And when he got there, he found a lot of Tamang children who were not going to school because the nearby school only taught in Nepali. And the Tamang children were having a very hard time coping up. So his idea was to start a primary school where the teachers were Tamang, so that by the time the kids got to the secondary level, they would be at the same level. So just out of him, I called Chris, that's his name. So I called Chris and talked to him on the phone for an hour or so. And I made a promise. I made a promise that I would raise $5,000 to help build his school. And again, when it broke the money, so obviously most of the thing. So my plan was to raise the money in my own college. So I used to organize dinners at the school. I used to beg my professors. I used to beg my friends. So $11,000 uthaayo when we built the school. So this is the picture of the school under construction. So in 2008 I graduated. What I knew then was, I had already started sort of making plans to come to Nepal. So instead of, going and getting a job at a big fancy consulting firm, I opted to work in a fairly small company that was more like, it wasn't really a startup, but had a very startup environment. The job I was doing was market research. So the market research we were doing was focused on economic development. So this picture is of a building that was my first project. So this was a Whirlpool fridge or Whirlpool distribution facility here. This is 1 million square foot building based a little bit outside Atlanta. What happened was Whirlpool moved their assembly line to Mexico, so they vacated this building. So this building had been empty for 2 years. So my task was to find buyers or people to lease this property. So again, property. So my job was to continuously research potential companies that could come and take space here. So it took me about a year. Eventually we found a German company that manufactures solar panels, and they eventually took about half of this building and started distributing solar panels from the building. Then something interesting happened. I think Ornika also mentioned 2009 global recession, financial crisis in the US. What changed was the type of work I was doing at my job changed drastically. So now, or as I said earlier, my focus was on big companies, big clients. All of a sudden, because of the recession, interest suddenly shifted toward smaller companies. No longer would a company come and take a 1 million square foot building. So, most of the economic development work started being focused more on job creation, creating entrepreneurs, helping small businesses grow. So that's when I started to have build my interest in entrepreneurship. Interestingly, around the same time, my immediate boss got hired to set up a business incubation center at Michigan State University. And he sort of hired me to do the research for the incubation center. And that's when I probably first heard the word business incubation. Business incubation is basically a process where you take somebody with a business idea and help them develop their own business. Then in 2010, I finally decided to make the move back to Nepal. There are two things involved. First thing was I actually convinced my company to set up an outsourced data entry station here in Kathmandu, because the data entry work that we were doing in the US was proving very expensive simply because of the recession. And the other thing was, at that point, I had strong confidence that our political leaders would write a constitution for our country. So having that sort of confidence, I bought the tickets, I came back to Nepal. What happened once I came back is, my first few months was actually, just occupied in setting up the outsourcing company, the data entry that I mentioned earlier. But wherever I went, I was actually living in Thomel with my uncle at that point, because my parents were actually in the US. So I did not really have a place to stay, so I was staying with my uncle. So I used to pass Parashtra Mantralaya every day, and I used to see a long line of people for people waiting to get MRP passports. And I used to wonder, why do we Nepalese always have to go abroad? And the answer in my mind was there are not enough jobs in the country. So, my interest started kind of going back to the work I was doing in the US, creating jobs. So I started wondering what I could do to create jobs. And the answer was very simple. It was a one-word answer: entrepreneurship. So I started wondering what I could do to help create more entrepreneurs, help create more jobs in the country. And that's when the idea of Biruwa Ventures came to my mind. And what had happened a little bit earlier in 2010 when I came back to Nepal was setting up that outsourcing company. It took me about two months to set up our office space. Finding office space, finding furniture, setting up power backup. And then another month, finding the right lawyers to register the company. And then I started asking around among other entrepreneurs, and pretty much across the board, everybody was facing the same kind of problem. They were having a hard time setting office space, they were having a hard time finding legal consultants, they were having a hard time finding financing. So I realized there is a space in the market to serve entrepreneurs, provide real services. So that's how Biruwa started. So our initial step was to set up a shared office space. So we set up a space in Balatar with just 7 workspaces where entrepreneurs could come and rent a workspace and get started immediately. And I did not know how that would work out. It's interesting, my initial plan was to invest around 20-25 lakhs. My sort of very high-end plan was even 60 lakhs investment. But I started talking to a few experienced entrepreneurs, and everybody suggested that it's probably better to start small. So I started with an investment of just rupees 3 lakhs in our first office space. And interestingly, maybe our timing was right, maybe I got lucky. Within 3 months, our space was completely occupied. So I got more confident that maybe this model works in Nepal. So very quickly in 2012, we expanded our office space. We got a whole building in Balwatar, and from 7 workspaces, we increased to 25 workspaces. And even there, the spaces were occupied very, very quickly. Within, I think, 3 months, the space ran out. And what I realized was, that entrepreneurs, not only did they like our space because we were providing the infrastructure. We have full power backup, we have high-speed internet. So they liked that fact. But it was actually the ecosystem that Biruwa was building that attracted a lot of people. In fact, Ornico was also one of our clients. He recently moved out once, obviously, his business keeps on growing. So he recently got a space in Putali Sarak, so he just moved out a couple of weeks ago. More and more people started coming to Biruwa, more and more people started looking for support from us. So we kept on growing. So this is a picture of our team right now. So we have around 13 full-time staff. You probably recognize a couple of faces here too. In 2013, our focus slightly shifted towards consulting business. So now, not only are we providing office space, we are also providing legal support. So, if you remember, I mentioned I spent 1 month finding the right lawyer. Now we have a team of 3 full-time lawyers working to help people register their companies, fulfill all the legal compliances. We have a team of accountants who can, basically help you figure out how to keep your books, how to do your auditing, VAT facility, PAN, something explain that. The time is up, so I'm moving very quickly. So this is my last slide. So 2014 just started. So we are actually in the process of redrawing our plans. So Biruwa started in 2011. I had initially sort of created a plan of about 3 years with some goals, and we basically fulfilled all of them. And now we are kind of sitting down as a team and figuring out the next steps. So like Ornico said earlier on, I think, even I hesitate to think that I've already achieved something. So we are still building, we are still growing. Even our name suggests Biruwa, obviously we have to grow. So, I just want to wrap it up by saying a couple of things. First thing, I always reflect back to my experience with building the school back in 2007. If I hadn't done that, if I hadn't volunteered my help to build a school, I would probably have lost all my contacts in Nepal. So doing that volunteer work actually helped me build, maintain, and even grow my network in Nepal. And it actually helped build a reputation. So when I moved back to Nepal in 2010, a lot of people were willing to meet me, willing to talk to me because I had already done something. I had already shown that if I commit, I deliver. So that was one thing. The other thing was, I've always sought advice from people who are more experienced. One person who has really helped me out is Ujjwal Thapa. A lot of you might know him as Viveksit Nepali, Cheto number 4 Kukur Sinnaबाट he's the guy who actually suggested that I should scale down my initial investment plan back in 2010 and start small. The other thing is, what I've always tried to do in my life is, if other people have helped me, I've tried to help others. And that has always continuously increased my own network because, the more I help, the more people I know. So, there are a lot of people that I've met in the last 3 years in Nepal who have really contributed to what Biruwa has done. You know, this is, even though I started Biruwa by myself, we would not have been able to do this without a good team. And, you know, I think we're on to something. We do plan to grow, we do plan to move forward, and I hope that my story does inspire at least one person today. Thank you very much.